Attention! Attention! You are listening to a pre-recorded episode of The Curious Realm. Curious Realm is busy traveling the vast void of time and space to find the best paradigm-changing content the universe has to offer. Enjoy the following transmission, and remember, stay curious. Coming to you from the City of the Weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this very special pre-recorded episode of The Curious Realm. Even though I am currently bilocating between Austin, Texas and Atlanta, Georgia, we are bringing you fantastic new content as always tonight. In the second part of the episode, we will be talking about cryptozoology with our good friend Ken Gerhard. We'll be talking about the world of cryptozoology as well as different cryptids from places and traditions across the globe and how those relate to modern day cryptozoological research. In this segment, we will be joined by our good friend Sev Tok. She is the host of Alien Spirit. She is the author of You Have the Right to Talk to Aliens. She is an experiencer herself, as well as researcher and literal, only way I can put it, Sev, and I hate using the cheesy term, but starseed, somebody who literally has the love of the stars in their heart for not only experiencers, but non-experiencers alike. And, somebody that I always recommend people whenever they have come to me and said that they have had an experience. Your book is one of the first ones that I turn them to. Because it really is a beautiful story of transformation, a story of somebody coming from a beginning of understanding of their experience in terms of fear, as so many do, to turning that into an understanding of an experience of love and how you have been called to help others through your experience. So welcome back to the show. How have you been?
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction. It really touched my heart.
Oh.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I always love talking with you.
Same here. You are one of my first guests that I ever actually had. When this show first started, as you know, Sev, we were not Curious Realm. We were a show called Dudes and Beer. And it was literally three guys and a gal that sat around a table drinking beer, talking about different topics, and every once in a while it would be the fact of my old producer hat would come on. Somebody would be like, "This, I heard about this," and I'd be like, I can find us a guest on that. And you were one of the first ones to ever come on the show and share your experience. You had just published your book shortly before that, and amongst the communities that we mutually belong to, I saw your post and I was like, we should have her on the show. And it's built a beautiful friendship, a beautiful relationship over the last many years. And I want to thank you for always coming on the show, always coming on to share your story and to come on and talk about community issues like we're talking about tonight. This is one of the many bells that I've been ringing over the last few years, is the idea that there are divisive things going on within many of the paranormal communities out there, UFO UAP being one of them, where many people who I think were seen as very seminal in the movement, specifically in the disclosure movement, have come out saying some very wild things over the last couple years that have been very, very divisive. We had our mutual friend Kathleen Marden on all of a couple years ago. Kathleen Marden, and it was a double banger. We had Kathleen Marden and Earl Grey on discussing the statements by Stephen Greer that the Betty Barney Hill episode was my labs, not an actual incident of alien abduction. We had Earl Grey on talking about the Linda Napolitano documentary when Peter's lawsuit went through on that, and Linda's lawsuit went through on that for misrepresentation by Netflix as to what the documentary was, how it was going to be covered. These things going on in the community, I think, have really created not only a rift in communities, but I think a rift in the heart of experiencers when it comes to their want to share, their want to come forward with experience. No different than now that, and a horrible prime example is the Epstein files and the hearings going on currently with Pam Bondi, and the idea that survivors are physically there, physically standing up for what has happened to them. And I think that this is a great, beautiful place that we are coming to, where we as a country, we as a people are able to confront these things that are huge topics, very nebulous topics, something that is very big and very scary in some ways. And I think that the alien situation, the only way to put it, Sev, is very scary to a lot of people, to a lot of common everyday people. It's a topic that's way too big, way too nebulous, that they have zero control over. Like at least heaven and hell, you have some kind of control over, according to religious upbringing. You know, as long as you're going to church on Sunday and reading the book, like, you're good, you're set. But when it comes to something like this, there's zero control over it. And I think it insets some panic in different facets of society. So, how did your experience, let's begin with your experience and kind of move that forward into the community realm, and how these kind of experiences catalyze the community in different ways. How did your experience and your change of viewing your experience change you, Sev?
Well, coming out was the best thing I've ever done. Completely changed my life for the better. And I came out I came out to myself first. That's the most important thing. And Kathleen Morden helped me with that. And we've since forged a really nice relationship. She's a colleague of mine and a mentor. And so I always had Kathy if I needed help, or mental help, or just trying to process what happened to me. So I do suggest for people who are finally ready to deal with this, first you have to come out to yourself. And if you need help, I can help you. There are other people that can help you. It's pretty easy to find help these days. Back when I first came out, I didn't know about anybody that could help me. I didn't even know if there was anybody out in the world that would help someone who came face to face with an extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Well, I'm here to tell you that, yeah, we're here. We can help you if you come face to face. Now, one thing I did discover, I wrote the book. Well, let me say I wrote my book. It was received very nicely. I started speaking at conferences, started doing radio shows. It all happened very, very quickly. And I was really well received. I'm so grateful. I was treated really kindly. A lot of people supported me and helped me, like you. And I'm just so grateful for that. I have not had a bad experience coming out. There are some observations I have, though, within the UFO community.
Absolutely.
So my book came out in 2018, and it's based on some of my lifetime experiences, but mostly on an experience I had in 2017 in North Carolina that completely changed my life. There were 2 red X marks that were burned into my back by the Greys. So it's been 8 years, we're going on 8 years now that I've been in the UFO world, and it's changed. It's changed for the better too, because mainstream is talking about UFOs and ETs more than ever now. not necessarily talking about it in a positive light, not necessarily portraying ETs and UFOs in a positive light, as Steven Spielberg has done. I don't know what he's going to do with the new movie. I'm hoping it'll have a positive, helpful message. That's the whole point of disclosure, is to move us along in a better direction and not to wipe us off or kill us or destroy us. And the other thing I have witnessed in talking to many experiencers, because I help experiencers around the world, and talking at conferences around the world and meeting a lot of people who've had experiences. For some reason, and maybe it's just a phase, but right now we don't feel heard and we don't feel seen.
Yeah.
And the ones that are being heard and seen, and we talked about this a little earlier, are these people who have these podcasts. The information is sensationalized.
Yep.
Now, they're almost, 99% men? Okay, fine. Some of the information they're giving is very helpful. They have big viewership numbers. So they're doing something good. They are helping disclosure. But there comes a point when these people run out of things to say, and they're not speaking from personal experience. They're only repeating what they heard. They're only sharing what they saw. So at some point, you're going to run out of stuff to talk about on your podcast, and then what are you going to do? And this is what I'm seeing right now, and I've talked about this with my colleagues. We're all starting to see that things are kind of being exaggerated. Dates are being put out there, which is a dangerous thing to do when you put a date out there.
Yeah.
Dates are being put out there. They're not being met. The person who put the date out doesn't suffer any consequences, keeps on going.
Yep.
People are still listening to them.
Yeah.
Like, and so there's so much information out there. I think the average person gets confused as to who should I listen to and where should I go and where should I start? And that's the very reason. I didn't know I was going to segue into this, but I am. Excuse me. The very reason I created my podcast, UFO and ET 101. So you can just get the basics. So it's not sensationalized. It's not, I'm not trying to grab your attention by teasing you with something.
Yep.
Yes. And so right now I have 5 episodes right now, more to come. And so this is good for everybody, regardless of how much you know about the UFO world, whether you're new or you're seasoned. Because at the end of every episode, I have a quiz. I have 3 questions where I have a little quiz. And just because I just want people to be in the know. We have to be in the know. We can't continue living with our head in the sand. And many people are living with their head in the sand. We are not the only beings in the galaxies. And if you're going to continue pretending like we are, you're really at a great loss, because you're not going to be able to progress along with the world as the rest of us take this information and use it for our betterment. Those of you who are denying it are just going to get lost in the process.
Well,
you're going to get lost. You're going to get scared. Yeah. And that's not what this is all about.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting because we had that conversation just a couple weeks ago with Barbara Sobhani, physicist, you know, runs a NASA Space Consortium grant, all kinds of things. And for her to even say, like, yes, I've said for years and told my students for years, like, I believe that there is life out there, you know, and for a physicist to boldly say that. But that's simply because if you look at any star, most of them have planets around it. Like just about every one of them. So just odds on favorite, there's something out there. Whether or not it's humanoid or looks like us or is intelligent or whatnot, doesn't mean that there isn't life out there, you know, and that in and of itself begs scientific exploration. So you have to be open-minded. Even as a scientist, you have to be open-hearted and open-minded enough to court the data when it comes in front of you.
Yes. Well, I believe there's an underlying element here, and that is fear.
Yes.
And so why, let me just talk about Americans.
Absolutely.
I know them the best.
Yeah.
Why are Americans so fearful of this information? Why are we as a society so afraid of this? Why aren't we as a society more content with ourselves, more content with our reality, more fulfilled? Why aren't we? And some say we're controlled to be like that, to keep us small. And it could very well be that the ETs are the ones that are going to show us that we've all been brainwashed, and then we have this giant thumb on top of our heads. I do not believe the government is going to tell us the truth unless they unless there's some kind of literally catastrophic event, something that you cannot deny, then they'll admit it. But until then, I do not think that we should be looking to the government for answers. With that said, every time there's a hearing on TV, I watch it, I summarize it, I make a video about it. It's important because it's injecting some information into our societal energetic matrix, which is very important, into the minds of our citizens. This is very important. But at the same time, we have to realize these are very controlled hearings. Yep. We're really not going to learn anything new in these hearings, but at least the information is getting out there. So they do serve some positive purpose. Absolutely. But we're not going to get any good information from any of those hearings.
Well, and
truth.
And even whenever Earl, God bless his soul, was alive, and every time a hearing happened, he came on this show and we broke it down and we listened to clips and we would talk about that exact concept and the idea of these hearings are not for us. They are not for the average UFO researcher. The average UFO researcher amongst the general population averages about like a UFO, Sev. We're about 5 to 10% of the population. We already know this stuff. This isn't for us. It's for the 80% of the population that doesn't believe or doesn't understand that these things have been going on. There's like the slice of us, the 10 to 15% that's there that understand this, that get that hearing isn't for us. It's for people like my dad.
But it's not enough anymore.
No, we have to do more. It's not enough
anymore. So all of this information has been spit out.
Yep.
People are like, okay, we know. We heard about Area 51. We know about reverse engineering. We know they know the lingo. They know everything. But still, it's like, show me something. Show me something tangible. And so what comes along is a boogosphere. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what that is, but that's just not enough. I mean, we need some, but the thing is, there is evidence out there. There's evidence out there. There's Betty and Barney evidence. There's quite a bit. The dress, other things. There's 2 red X marks on my ass. I mean, I would think that would be some kind of evidence.
With the star map
kinds of
from
other
Betty
evidence,
Hill.
but for some reason, it is not catching the attention of the mainstream. Something has to be shared that's going to catch the attention of the mainstream. That's what I'm waiting for. We're getting tired of hearing all these military men say, oh yeah, well, somebody told me this, but I can't tell you who told me. Oh yeah, I heard about this, but I can't tell you where I heard it from. We've had enough of that.
Yeah. And you know, I'm bringing up the Jerusalem Post article about the boogosphere right now. But even whenever you talk about things like the boogosphere, my issue with the boogosphere is the source of the boogosphere. You know, I grew up in Texas in the 1980s. I remember when Jaime Maussan, back in the late 80s, early 90s, started doing his Friday evening UFO reports from Mexico City on Telemundo and stuff like that. Like I had friends' houses who watched Telemundo and I barely understood Spanish, but I'd go watch because they were talking about that. And I loved Jaime Maussan. He was a hero to me, man. And to see him now, where we're talking about the first crop of mummies from Paracas was proven fake. The small alien skeleton that was supposedly found, proven fake. The small the fairy skeleton that was found, proven fake. Like, how many times will I let Jaime Maussan break my heart?
Mhm.
You know, even the last batch of Paracan mummies that came from Nazca, where it's like, wait a minute, did you just admit that you don't have any bona fides on these, that you don't have any permission from the Peruvian government to remove bodies, but here they are in front of the Mexican Congress? Like, you're just going to bring them out in front of the Mexican Congress and say that you like tomb raided these artifacts and brought them in. And to see people like Stephen Greer be involved with a couple of those previous mentions. He was fully involved with the small alien skeleton. He was fully involved with the small fairy skeleton, things like that. So when researchers of that ilk, who, yes, I will always say with the National Press Club meetings, things like that, Stephen Greer was to be held on high at one point when it came to his information about the UFO UAP community. He was a huge voice of capital D disclosure, things like that. But there have been a lot of things that he has said and done in the community over the last many years that have become very divisive. Even, once again, the remarks about the Betty and Barney Hill incident, where it's like, how do you explain the star map? I'm sure some astrophysicist is just going to give away their work of a star map that didn't exist at the time.
I am mildly obsessed with Marjorie Fish.
Really? How so?
Well, she took that star map and she figured out the stars, and there was no internet, and she was a math teacher. I think she was a math teacher, and she would just go to the library and just write down everything. To me, it's amazing. Like, her mind was a computer and how she did it.
Yeah.
I'd really like to know more about her and what she was like. From what I understand or what I remember, I think she was pretty much kind of like a loner. I think she was a single lady. She was a teacher, but I find her mind amazing. And here she is. She's offered the world some really cool information. She's an important part of disclosure, but yet a lot of people don't know who Marjorie Fish is. Yeah.
Yeah. And she
took that, and then she was able to say, oh, that's Zeta Reticuli, and that's this and that's that. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Able to decode it from, a few known stars and things like that. But for this map to actively be proven as a reality, it's not like Betty Hill was a backyard astronomer like I am, or something like that, or a Mark D'Antonio, to that extent. So yeah, there are numerous things like that just do not add up. Not including the fact of, in order to implant a memory in somebody's mind, you kind of have to have a societal trope to begin with, something that they would believe. And alien abduction was just not a thing yet. It was not the cultural phenom that it is now, where, yes, people will gladly say that they have had an alien abduction, or even, people to the extent of Corey Goode, who came into the community and said, like, I met blue avians. Come to find out, in his numerous hours of deposition, the blue avians were meditation guides that he created, and even said, and I quote, anybody else who says they have seen the blue avians is delusional. So I guess as all those people came up to you, shook your hands, bought your books, bought your movies, had you sign things, and said, I saw them too, and you said, wow, that's amazing, you just spoon-fed their delusion for some money. And that's a real thing. That is a real thing in the communities that only further victimizes people, Sev, and makes real people with real experiences not want to come forward.
True. I have TV stations that ask me, oh, can you suggest some experiencers for us to interview? I'm like, no. I mean, it's not like they're ready to come out and put their face on the news.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah, they're barely
And
ready
why
to
is
talk
that?
to
It's
their
sad.
family about it.
I wish they could be comfortable. Excuse me?
I said they're barely ready to talk to their families about it most of
Or
the
to
time.
themselves, even.
Yeah.
I mean, let's try and cross that hurdle first. The one is like admitting it really happened. That's the biggest issue with experiencers.
Yeah.
On my podcast, is it episode 5, the last one I just did, signs you may be an ET contactee. And there's lots of them. Also, I have an episode called Top 10 Military UFO Whistleblowers, numbers 1, 2, and 3. And on that episode, I cover Elizondo, Rush, and Barber.
Yeah. And I would gladly interview Lou Elizondo. Lou, if you're listening, feel free to hop on. I'd love to chat with you. But there are questions that I have about Lou Elizondo. Like the videos that were initially released were only declassified for interdepartmental use. They were not declassified for like media release. So how did you keep top secret clearances after releasing videos that weren't cleared for media release?
We have to remember, we can't act like these men are coming out and telling us secrets.
Yeah.
I think every single ufologist I know has been threatened. And I'm not talking silly threats. I'm talking real threats, including me. Threats that stop me in my tracks. Just about all of us can say this. So if you really think that these military guys are going to sit there and tell you deep secrets, oh my God, I shouldn't be telling you this, and they're still alive, okay, I ask you to consider that.
Yeah. That is
because what you really want to know, if someone told you, you wouldn't see them again. So for those of us who've been threatened, we know what to stay away from. And for some reason, there are certain things that we can talk about. So I'll talk about all the things that I can talk about that I'm not threatened about, but that particular thing that I got a threat about, I will not talk about. Maybe one day I will, but right now there's no way.
Yeah.
It's something that I witnessed in person, and I can't talk about it because I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Isn't that a shame? Because I was threatened. It was an ugly threat. It was a bad threat. It was bad. Okay, but I don't want to turn this into me.
That's okay.
But the whole point is, and I'm just little old me. I'm just little old me. I'm not out here giving like military secrets. Yeah. And I got that threat. Now, imagine if they were really giving military secrets. Man, I mean, they would not be alive. It's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So everyone, just listen to these people, keeping that in the back of your mind.
Yes. Yes.
So are they informants? Are they psyops? Who are these military men that are coming out and saying all these things? What's their role? What's their purpose?
Yeah.
Are they legit? Are they messing us? Are they messing with our minds? Or are they slowly leading us in the right direction? I don't know.
The example I give that we will probably see from the hearings at some point is an Ollie North. An Ollie North-esque character who will come forward and say, yes, I was in charge of this. I was in charge of that for these various contractors. And, he will be basically the fall guy. And does that mean, like when Ollie North happened, does that mean that the CIA quit running drugs or guns? Absolutely not. 1,000% not.
I remember that whole thing.
They still do it. They still do it.
Hall. Do you remember Fawn Hall?
Yeah, but that's the example I give my dad. My dad is of the generation where he's like, oh, what are they wasting all this time about little green men? Everything else. And it's like, they're never going to wheel out a gurney and like have the Houdini pull a sheet off the table moment. Aha, here's the wreckage and the tube with the body. That's not what's going to happen. But hopefully what you get is, like Grush said, that like I went to the door following the money I was supposed to follow and the door was slammed in my face. Like eventually we'll find out the person behind the door in charge of the purse strings and we'll get to choke them with it. It's like it's more than one person. Oh yeah, no, it's hundreds and tons of programs. And it's done that way specifically for a reason. No different than Iran-Contra was e pluribus unum when it came to drug running or weapons running, things like that. People forget that even the attack on the forward base in Benghazi, Sev, was because the gas weapons used in Syria came from the forward base in Benghazi. Like there was a reason behind that attack, and a reason why so many people were like, what's the big deal? Why are we talking about this? People attacked our people. It's like, no, it's a big deal because like they have a trail of papers that show that gas weapons came from this facility. And we are complicit in that. But you have to be willing to admit that, even as a country. You have to be willing that your government is willing to do such things, that your government is willing to take place in atrocities for money.
But when I start thinking about what right do a group of people, mostly men, but a group of people, what right do they have to keep the truth away from me, that we are not the only civilization in our reality? And what right do they have to keep that reality away from me? And how have they done it for so long? Yeah. They don't have any right to keep that from us. No right whatsoever. And so how long is it going to take? I don't know. Do you think you're going to see true, like definite disclosure in your lifetime?
I don't know. I don't think in that kind of way. I don't know if I'll ever see it in my lifetime. I think that there will probably be a few announcements of things, stuff like that. I think that there will probably be, announcements that there have been reverse engineering, that we have found things and we've gotten technologies from them. Because literally, kind of like George Knapp said in his part of the last hearing, these guys, laud the contractors. They've done their job. Their job is to shut up and analyze material that they've been given and shut up about it. So good on them for doing their job. However, when you insulate science like that, it's hard to do all the science. It's hard to find new applications for that science when you don't have people competing with that science. We got robots on Mars as fast as we did because we held competitions to build robots on Mars. We got stealth technology as fast as we did because we held competitions to build stealth technology. So without that competition, science suffers. And these contractors who have been reverse engineering this and only pushing it to the point that they can push it inside of their insular cavity of science are looking for an off-ramp and a way to bring in other scientists, a way to collaborate on this information, to take it to the next level, to make it to where, yes, possible free energy for humanity, what have you. But we can't do those things. We would hope. Yeah, but I don't think that's their intent. I don't think the American scientists want to work with the Chinese scientists on building a UFO. No, but even within America, Oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like, they can't take it to MIT. MIT isn't read in on the program. So when you can only take it to people read in on certain programs, you've very narrowed the field of scientific inquiry, scientific study, and scientific application of a technology, which means you've literally hindered the ways it can grow by doing so.
Collaboration is very important. And Jacques Vallée talks about the need to share, for all countries to share their UFO information with each other. And that's the only way we're going to be able to tackle what's happening. But
it's tough, though, because...
So these are the things I think about. What would it take to get a spaceship to actually land? Well, all these things that we're talking about, all the issues that we have on Earth, do they all need to be remedied and healed before a spaceship comes? Do we need to be nicer? Do we need to stop killing each other? Do we need to be more honest? Do we need to be more compassionate? Do we need to be more transparent? I don't know. I'm just asking. Is this what we're waiting for? A kinder, gentler, more loving society that can then accept another civilization? Is that what they're waiting for? And if that is the case, I think that's a long wait.
We got a lot of work to do. If that's the case, Sev, we got a lot of work to do just here.
Because the purging has begun.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about this, but we're just going to mention that the Bondi hearings were yesterday. And so there's a lot of purging. We're seeing a lot of vomiting, and that it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's more coming.
Absolutely.
And not with women, with children, and the next area is going to be animals. Once we start to really examine all the area and the elderly, when we see all these, all the ways that we exploit and abuse, they all have to come to light, and it's going to be hard. The thought of harming an infant for your gain is almost, it's impossible to swallow. But if that's what's happening, we need to open our eyes and get strong and deal. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a very, very much right now a buck up humanity moment, as far as owning it, taking responsibility for our actions as a humanity, taking responsibility for our actions toward each other as humanity. I don't know. Hate is a word that is not really allowed in my house. Literally.
I wasn't allowed to say that either. I was not allowed to say, I hate you to my sister. My mother would say, no, do not use the word hate.
You can hate an action in my house. You can hate stubbing your toe, but you can't hate people.
No.
You can't hate people, because at that point you are minimalizing, you're filtering the white light of humanity and not understanding that we're all different people with different needs. We're all driven by different things. And I'm not allowing anybody's horrible or horrendous actions by that, Sev. I think everybody needs to be held accountable for their horrible and horrendous actions. But I don't know. I find it odd to say I hate somebody whose hand I've never shook or presence I've never shared. I think that there's a certain imbalance in that statement, and in that mentality. In the idea of like, but you've never actively shared energy in that kind of way with them. So how can you hate them?
Okay. And that's exactly what's being developed is a lot of people hate the ETs. If there's ETs,
absolutely,
they hate them because they're all demons. Some people think every single ET that exists is a demon.
Yep. No.
It's like saying every single person that exists is a demon. Is that true? No.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And that's just it. It's a very distillative mindset. And the phrase that I use with people all the time is there's only one thing that comes from distillation, and that's volatile materials. That's it. Volatile materials come from distillation. That's how you make liquor. That's how you make essential oils, things like that.
I'm going back to my years in chem lab.
So
precipitants.
Yeah.
Those are the little things that were left.
Absolutely. The leavings from distillation. But that's just it. Like the purpose of distillation is to purify a thought. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. To distill a thought down like that, because that's literally the roots of racism. Everybody who does this is this. You end up with a lot of false equivocations when you have a distillative mindset like that. So, and that ends up a lot of where our communities end up across the paraspectrum. Is in this distillative mindset, like you're saying, the people who are out there saying right now that all of these are demonic entities. No different than the people who are saying that they're all angelic orbs. I don't know about that. I think that would be quantifiably harder to prove than the fact that they're an alien craft.
That the orbs are angelic?
Yes. I think if you're talking about any quantifiable kind of science, whether or not you're talking about them manifesting upon command or not, the idea of proving that they are an angelic orb, it takes on no different than the quandary of I saw Bigfoot appear through a portal and then he disappeared through one again. Where do you start researching, the Bigfoot or the portal?
Right.
You know, because now you've got two phenomena occurring at the same time, and one is the source of the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
and we don't understand.
How do you phenomenologically prove one of them so that you can even begin to prove the other?
Yeah, we can't. We're not there.
So, yeah, like even evolved wise mentality or spiritually or scientifically as humanity, we are not there.
So that's why it is important to listen to the experiencers, because most of us have had conversations with these ETs.
Yeah.
And they've given us information, very valuable information. And we want to share that.
Yeah.
Most of us want to share that, whether we do it showing our face or whether we do it hiding our name, whatever. Many experiencers have a need that they need to share information with the world.
Yeah.
Many of them don't because they're afraid that they're going to be ridiculed. But there is that need, that desire there. Where does that come from? It comes from, I think it's just human nature. You know the truth about something and you just want to share it. This is a truth and let me share this truth with you. So it's very frustrating for those of us who've had experiences, and we hear these people go back and forth on these podcasts asking questions. And sometimes I'm like, okay, but I've had an experience where maybe I can give you some kind of answer to your question, or I know someone else who had an experience that might be able to offer some illumination to your question. But those people aren't interested in the very people who had the actual experience, which kind of blows my mind. When I first came into the UFO world, one of the very, very first UFO podcasts I was on was Grant Cameron.
Okay.
He was so supportive. And he's always said, if you want to know what's going on, ask the experiencers. If you want to know what's going on, I've been hearing him say this for about 8 years now.
Absolutely.
He's probably been saying it for longer. And it's still not happening very much. I'm waiting for the day when there's more of a shift towards the experiencer. You drew the comparison between the Epstein files and those unfortunate young ladies knowing a truth and just wanting to say it, but no one wants to hear it.
Yep. Yeah. And I draw the same comparison regularly to the hashtag #MeToo movement, Sev. Like, I grew up with a single mother who definitely got paid less than men doing the same damn job, who definitely got harassed by dudes in her office every day that she went to work, things like that.
We all did.
And maybe
I look at my life as before Anita Hill and post Anita Hill. Yeah. That's really how I look at my life. And not that after Anita Hill, it got that much better, but it did improve a little bit.
At least some people around you were now aware and had eyes open. And that's exactly my point, is the fact of at least now people are societally aware that, yes, these things happen, that it ain't a lie. It's not just somebody saying something. Until somebody says something, nothing ever gets done. So somebody has to be brave enough to say something. And everybody out there in the Curious Realm group who has confronted me about the Epstein files, I will continue to say the same thing. I will believe the experiencer and the victim until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Forever and always, Sev. I will always believe because I've had my own experiences that are unexplicable. I've had my own experiences that have changed my heart, changed my spirituality, changed my life.
That's the whole thing. If there was more interest in the messages that we've received, it could really help make being an earthling a little easier. That's what really all these messages are geared towards. Let me give you some information that can make being an earthling a little easier, because it is really hard right now. Yeah. And so when I speak at conferences, I have one talk where I share the artwork of experiencers and I share the profound and life-changing information the ETs gave them. And I explain how their lives changed from the profound information that the ETs gave them. I'm going to be speaking in Colorado twice coming up, once in May at Colorado MUFON.
Great.
That is May 9th. in Centennial, Colorado. I love Colorado. I'm so grateful that they asked me. And also I've been asked to return to speak at a conference in Colorado called the Snippy Conference.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Oh,
awesome.
Really an interesting conference. Yes, that is August 13th to the 16th on Mosca. And it's on the King family land. The King family is the one that owns Snippy. That was the first famous mutilation. Yep. There were a lot of UFO sightings in the area at that time. So we're in that land. And this is done outside under tents. So there's a night watch. You're right by the mountains. It's extraordinary. You can camp if you want. If you don't want to camp, there's a nearby hotel.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And
I'm going to be in that. I'm going to be talking about ETs and AI.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Jacques Vallée said that there is an AI component to ETs.
Oh, I would not doubt that one bit.
So, but how? What does that mean? How does that work? Or ETs AI? Is AI ETs? Like, it's such an interesting thing to just ponder.
Well, you know, when you consider the fact of something traveling interstellar distance, something like that, yes, you would need some kind of AI to run a ship, even if people are in hyperstasis or what have you, to take that kind of long journey. If not, then you're talking about a generational program, and you have to make sure that in some way, shape, or form, the example that comes to my mind, oddly, is the story of Jordan from, what was the show that I used? I listened to a lot of old school radio dramas. And this was a Ray Bradbury story about literally a ship named Jordan that everybody on the ship had been there for generations and generations. And the ship had basically become like their god because the god knew the purpose of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
If otherwise, how's the purpose of the trip not going to get corrupted over generations? You know,
well, did Hal get corrupted?
Well, Hal got corrupted because he didn't understand humanity.
Hal got corrupted. Yeah, is AI going to get corrupted?
When you're talking about the fact of, without that one thing that's there as a constant, keeping the record constant as to what this trip is about. If you're talking 5-6 generations of people, no different than sitting around and telling the story of an origin around a campfire. Mm-hmm. Things may change as those generations go on. The story of why you started this journey may change as things go on. And that's what happened on the ship. Was there were people who had followed Hal or who had followed Jordan and the teachings of Jordan since the beginning and were purists, and people who fell away from that and had their own thought form, who lived in the bowels of the ship and were rumored to exist. Who did not follow what Jordan thought and thought that this was the most horrifying trip humanity could ever make. So it's interesting to think about that. But when you're talking about a craft that may be sent as a probe or something like that, or a craft that may be carrying people generationally in that kind of way, then yeah, you know, an AI makes perfect sense. So
yeah, and you know, I just had this thought. Experiencers, the ones that have been on spaceships, often say the spaceship had its own consciousness. It had its own awareness. Like when I touched it, it was like I was touching another consciousness. Maybe that is what AI is. Yeah. They're interfacing with AI, which feels like a consciousness.
Yeah. And oddly, here's a really weird part of AI, Sev, is literally the predictive programming. How quick an AI begins to understand you, begins to understand what you actively want to hear. Mm-hmm. Things like that. So when you consider
what interests you, what gets your attention, the words you like, the phrasing,
the way you like things written.
ChatGPT, incredible life changer.
Yeah. But at the same time, kind of disturbing because it may be giving you actual hallucinations of things maybe giving you false facts in a way in which you accept them as real.
Yes. Well, you have to be careful. I mean, you still have to have your wits about you. Some people are using ChatGPT as their therapist. Oh, yeah. I do not think that's a good idea. No. Like, come on. You still have to stay smart.
Well, and you still have to talk to an actual person. You know, unfortunately, ChatGPT cannot emote. And ChatGPT can therefore, since it cannot emote, it cannot... I guess the only way to put it is to empathize. It cannot empathize because it cannot emote.
Okay, so there we go again. We're the tiny grays AI. Because the little grays that were engaged in sample taking and medical procedures, everyone always says, same thing with me. That guy right there that was standing 3 inches behind my back doing something to me, he emoted nothing. And that's what scared me the most. He was so neutral. There was like nothing coming out of him. And in all my other contact with the grays and with other entities, there was always telepathic communication, even with other grays. But with this one who was putting that X on my tush, I got nothing from him. And that was even scarier. It almost felt like you're dealing with some kind of
machine.
Machine, or just some kind of maniacal murderer or something that has no sympathy. I'm not saying that it was trying to murder me or anything like that, but that's what was so scary, because we automatically go there. If something's not emoting an emotion and looking you straight in the eyes, your initial reaction is like, this is going to hurt me. Because it doesn't care how I feel.
Yeah. And you bring up a very huge and humanizing point there, Sev, and that's the eye contact. The eye contact concept of, prime example, feel free to go look your dog in the eye, folks, see what happens. That is not an ingrained part of animal, not even higher order animal, not even great ape is eye contact. And the prime example, during my time of abnormal psychology and psychological study, things like that, I read a lot of the work of Jane Goodall. And the story of a chimp who had been rehomed back into the colony, that was raised with humans, that was almost beaten to death by its fellow chimpanzees who it went to return to at this refuge, because it had been brought up around humans. It had been brought up that eye contact is how you emote, that eye contact is okay. And it's not in chimpanzee society. It is not. That is a direct threat. And the animal was almost beaten to death, had to be returned to humans, could not live with others on the refuge ever. So the idea of that, even, the idea of how we react to the non-reception of eye contact, and how that oogs us as humanity, it's different. It's different. So when you're talking about the fact of there were the aliens who you had direct contact with telepathically, who gave you messages, who told you to relax, that we're not here to harm you, there's no ill intent, all that kind of stuff. At the same token and same time, there was the one who had no emotion.
Yeah, that one had no emotion.
Who innately put fear into you.
Well, I think I put fear into myself because I wasn't doing anything scary.
No, that's what I'm saying.
In and of itself, it was my interpretation of that.
Exactly.
Because at that point, I was playing the role of a victim. Yep. So, of course, this ET is going to victimize me.
Yeah.
Now, I see that's not the case at all. It was just doing its job, putting 2 red X marks on my ass. Yeah. I don't know why it was its job, but that was its job. And he did it really well. And it didn't hurt me.
They are nice X marks. Very straight lines.
It's amazing. Really, But so I am starting to foray into the area of AI and ETs. Mm-hmm. Where do they cross? Are they the same thing? What's going on? So I'm starting to enter that.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating conversation, Sev, truly, once you start exploring that concept of where AI may go, what we may use it for, even the concept of Dr. David Masters. You know, the idea that these may be us from the future. When you're talking about some experiences,
anything's possible. Anything's possible. Yeah, because we don't even understand time.
Yeah,
so absolutely anything is possible.
Yeah, precisely. So
this reminds me of a show. I don't know what it was called. It was a British show. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was a series. It was excellent. I wish I could remember the name. I would say within the last, I don't know, a few years. When you could have a choice of completely uploading your entire essence, your consciousness, your being into something that kind of looked like a Siri thing.
Okay.
Your entire consciousness, and then your physical body would die, but you're still living. Your consciousness is still living and can talk to people through like this contraption, this Siri contraption. And so your mother died, but not really, because you can still reach her through Siri.
Interesting.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the name of the show. It's British. It was so good. And so, these concepts have been introduced to us for decades. Little bits and pieces, science fiction stories. And here we are.
Yeah.
Hal is here. What are we going to do with Hal?
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we treat that? How do we treat the data from that? I use AI. I utilize AI for all kinds of things. But you have to be very specific about how you direct that data set, to the point that I even have built my own AI computer that exists offline, so that I can do that research without it being corrupted by Google search.
I can't even understand what that is. I don't even know how you do that. Okay.
Training it on data sets, training it on public information that's out there, things like that. So,
okay, I'm not drinking wine. I'm drinking a cold latte with oat milk.
Nice.
I just like wine glasses.
From our old show, Sev, I would not care if you were drinking wine on air.
I know, but it's 11 a.m. here where I am. So I have sessions.
We don't judge.
I do soul purpose sessions with clients around the world to help them.
That's true.
Align with their soul purpose and help them basically debrief the brainwashing that society has given us, so they can carve out their own reality the way they'd like it to be. So I have a couple sessions coming up today after
Fantastic.
we talk, so I cannot start the day off by drinking wine. At this age, I can't even do that anymore.
Right.
Remember when you were young?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you were.
No, I was young once. Every once in a while, as I'm still
drink
as
all day
good.
long.
Every once in a while, I'm still good, as good as I was when I was young when it comes to drinking. I tell people regularly that, I still kind of run a 5K every once in a while just so I can do a marathon.
You do?
No, I mean in reference to drinking.
Okay.
On occasion, I may have to run a marathon of drinking. So, I keep up with a few 5Ks a year. I will say, and you've been there, I tend to enjoy myself at the conferences in the evening, things
we
like that.
Do.
So,
we all do. It's a time to let loose and get to know each other.
It is.
Those
and
conferences are great.
And, really, Sev, as we wind this up, it really is about that understanding of yourself, that understanding of your place within the community, that understanding that we still need to research, and we still need to research the researchers, that diligence should never stop, and the prime example of that is people like Lou Elizondo, who here in the last year we covered, the two different images that came from his quote vetted sources, one of which was a chandelier, the other of which was just a large mowing circle, an irrigation circle in a field.
But he said he didn't even vet that. He said that was handed to him right before his talk, so he shared it with everybody.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, really?
Well,
really? That goes against your entire training for the past decades.
And even though you
have been trained to vet.
The other one came from a vetted source. The one that was a chandelier in a window came from a vetted source, Sev. So and that's just it. At what time do we stop vetting our vetted sources?
But people are still want to hear what he has to say.
Sure.
And okay, maybe there's still some value, but he has damaged his reputation. We just have to admit that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, are we ready to really kick him out? I don't think so.
No.
But we have to listen to him knowing that some evidence was presented that was not evidence.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then we have the Jake Barber who wants to like shoot everything down and sell it to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
We have that situation too.
Exactly. And it's so interesting how it runs the didactic from angels to demons, from friend to foe, from technology that we need to shoot out of the sky to technology that we need to send into the sky to keep them from shooting at us.
It's endless.
It's on every side of it. You may as well be rolling a Dungeons and Dragons dice. There are so many facets to the equation when it comes to this, Sev. But for me, it is the fact of talking with experiencers, listening with experiencers, despite anything that comes from vetted sources and communities, everything else, the experiencers are where we get data. The experiencers are where we get data that we can get nowhere else. And once again, until proven otherwise, we need to listen to experiencers. So,
yes, thank you.
Thank you for always sharing your story. Thank you for being as brave as you are in the face of all of these things, in the face of ridicule of the world as a whole. Before we let you go, Sev, let everybody know where they can, contact you for sessions, also where they can go to keep track of Alien Spirit, where they can go to keep track of UFO 101, or UFO and ET 101, all that kind of good stuff.
Thank you. I have a website, planetsev.com, and my email is sev@planetsev.com. I do sole purpose sessions with clients around the world. We do them through Zoom or in person. I have other sessions too. I have a third eye journey, which I love to do with clients. So this is a guided meditation, and it helps strengthen your psychic abilities, your ability to hear, feel, and see information through the dimensions, which we can all do. I have a YouTube channel, Alien Spirit with Sev, and my newest video is a really short, just the basics, what you need to know about the Virginia, Brazil UFO incident, which was recently presented at the Press Club in Washington, D.C. by James Fox. This is a fascinating incident. It involves multiple witnesses. It involves doctors seeing an ET in the hospital. It involves a young man dying because he touched the ET and got bacteria. It involves Men in Black. It involves Men in Black coming to a witness and offering her a briefcase full of money so she can keep quiet, and she refused. It is a fascinating case. And I'll be speaking at the Snippy Conference, as I said, in Colorado, and I'll be speaking at the Colorado MUFON as well in May. And I have other things in the works. I had an opportunity to teach UFO and ET 101, my podcast, which you can find on just about every podcast platform, including my YouTube channel. Back when I was living in North Carolina just a few weeks ago, I was going to teach a class at a community college there called UFO and ET 101. But something happened and I moved, and so I couldn't do that class. But now that class might be taken online.
Epic. That's so awesome.
I'm working on that right now.
Well, fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Whenever you have it ready, make sure to come back so we can help you promote.
Thank you. I would love to. Thank you.
Always.
And thank you for your support. You've been supporting me for years. I'm so grateful for you. And you're doing a great service. You are.
Well, I truly
Because not only your show isn't just about UFOs, it's about a variety of different topics, which is really refreshing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Truly. It's one of those, much like when I taught kids for years and years, like I was saying before the show, if I see one light bulb amongst 300 or 400 over the many years that I've taught. I'm happy. And I just had a light bulb moment today with a listener from a couple weeks ago that sent me a message that really rang home.
Yes.
It made me feel great. So thank you so much for your compliment. Thank you so much for your friendship over the last many years, Sev. It truly does mean the world. So
thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely. Same here. Hold the line real quick while we close things out for this segment. While you are online, everybody, checking out the amazing work of our good friend Sev Tok over at planetsev.com. Make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can find the embedded YouTube channels of all of our guests over at curiousrealm.com/videos. You can also find your link to the experiencer support group Awakening Together. This is protocols that we have written. There are numerous experiencer support groups out there through great folks like MUFON, International UFO Bureau, who Sev heads up, the experiencer group there. This is protocols for you to start your own groups locally. Very, very open-based, very non-judgmental, some fantastic protocols there, all kinds of things. Stop on by, check that out. curiousresearch.org/support is your link for that, folks. When we come back from this quick break, we will be joined by Ken Gerhard to talk about cryptozoology and so much more right after this. The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick break. Thank you so much for hanging on with us. Thank you also to our sponsors, True Hemp Science. If you're a user of CBD products like I am, stop on by truehempscience.com today. They are your source for amazing CBD products. Christopher Lynch and True Hemp Science use a spigeric process where every part of the hemp plant is used. Everything from the seeds, the stems, the roots, the buds, the leaves. Every part is used, combusted, and reused again until nothing remains, providing an amazing spigeric product. All of their products have complete terpene profiles, everything. Stop on by, check them out. TrueHempScience.com is the website that you want to go to. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more. Our guest in this segment is none other than the amazing Ken Gerhard. He is a cryptozoologist, author. He is the founder of Exploring Cryptozoology, a cryptozoology class that you can sign up for on Patreon. I've taken the course. It's absolutely amazing. I want to say you've even had a few modules come out since I went through the first course. He also just started his great new podcast there. That's basically a peek behind the curtain of cryptozoology, things like that. You can find more about Ken Gerhard over at kengerhard.com. Welcome back to the show. Ken, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, awesome, brother. Thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor.
Absolutely.
Always good to talk to you.
Yep. Same. Now, tonight I chose winged cryptids. It's something that I find fascinating. You know, we frequently talk about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all kinds of things on this show, but winged cryptids to me are one that are fascinating because they really do go back through the history of mankind. Everything from griffins to, hey, even Pazuzu, the African god of the West Wind, things like that. So, why the fascination with winged creatures, Ken?
Well, first of all, Christopher, I have to say that that's the third time that Pazuzu has come up this week in various projects I'm working on. So I don't know if that's a good, probably not a good thing, but it's a topic that just keeps popping up on the radar. So that's interesting. Man, yeah, it's, it's kind of how I got my start in the field. At least, carved out a niche for myself. I was investigating Bigfoot and other cryptids before that. But then in 2003, I interviewed a gentleman that claimed he had seen a winged, what I describe as like a pterosaur type of creature over Pasadena, Houston, Texas. And then I remembered the Big Bird saga, which took place down in the Rio Grande Valley. And it's the 50th anniversary of that. And that was for about 1.5 months, right around this time, January and February of 1976. There were dozens of sightings of a giant winged creature down in the valley in places like Brownsville and Harlingen, McAllen, and so forth. So I investigated those cases, and then I just, kind of opened the floodgates in terms of being able to have access to, eyewitnesses, experiencers. I guess I've kind of become the go-to guy for things like that. I've got, I regularly get people that that claim that they've seen these things, and they reach out to me and they want to share their experiences and stuff. And I try to build a database and keep track of all that evidence. But yeah, it's a really fascinating, what I always say, Christopher, is that, Bigfoot, the Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, there are a few rock stars. Bigfoot is really Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the rock star. But you have, the rock stars of cryptozoology, but the winged cryptids don't really get much attention, I guess, certainly there don't seem to be as many sightings. Granted, a lot of people may not talk about their sightings because they're not, familiar with things that are flying around up there. Maybe there is a bird that has a 15-foot wingspan. I just haven't heard of that, so... But yeah, whatever direction you want to go, man. We got all kinds of winged cryptids we can talk about. I've investigated traditional thunderbirds, prehistoric, living pterosaur accounts, and I guess the third category, the really weird ones, are the flying humanoid things like Mothman and stuff.
Well, let's start with the pterosaurs and thunderbirds, because that's one that and of course Mothman was in the news, all kinds of things. There were tons of news articles about that when the Silver Bridge collapse happened. All kinds of stuff. But these are things that at one point, yes, did exist. Like we did have large raptors the size of what they talked about as far as thunderbirds. We did have pterosaurs here in Texas. All kinds of things. So let's start there, because that's one that, is really like we always talk about whenever we have you on, the idea of, does it have a range? Could it feed? Could it breed? Things like that.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, in terms of, truly gigantic birds, the largest known one was Argentavis, which was a South American species of early teratorn, not pterosaur. People confuse those. Teratorn doesn't have a P at the beginning. And Argentavis was the largest. It had about a 25-foot wingspan, probably weighed about as much as a man, 160 pounds, stood about 6 feet tall, and it was kind of an ancestor to modern condors and vultures. So that was a bird that lived during the Miocene, probably into the Pliocene a little bit. So, died out maybe a few million years ago. But much more recently, Other types of teratorns lived in North America until the end of the Pleistocene, about 11,000 years ago. And hundreds of fossils have been found in the La Brea tar pits. I mean, there were tons of them there because they would descend on, these birds were scavengers, and they would descend on things that were stuck in the tar pits, and then they'd get stuck to and just kind of sink to the bottom, right? But Teratornis mariami from California and elsewhere probably had about a 12-foot wingspan. Not nearly as big as Argentavis, only about half the size, but there was a larger species formerly known as Iolornis, and I think they keep playing with the name there, but its fossils have been discovered in Oregon, and it had an 17 or 18 foot wingspan. So there were birds with, you know, kind of vulture-like characteristics, condor-like, flying around North America about 11,000 years ago, and they had this 18-foot wingspan. As far as modern birds, as you know, Christopher, I mean, you've got big eagles, you know, 7.5, maybe 8-foot wingspan. Condor, the California condor, Gymnogypes californianus, probably about a 8.5, 9-foot wingspan tops. And, you know, there are other types of birds like the wandering albatross that has, I think, like a 12-foot wingspan, but it's a very gracile, skinny, very thin-winged kind of thing. So that's as big as modern birds are supposed to get, you know, 8-foot, 9-foot wingspan. So we're talking about something that's twice as big as the biggest eagle or condor that you can imagine. That's what, you know, that's what people are describing in modern times.
Yeah. And that would be a massive animal to see. And of course, there's the story from, I guess it was like the 70s, from the Midwest, of the kid that was actually picked up by a bird and carried, things like that. So the idea of those incidents actually occurring, do you think that it's possible that a larger bird is out there, or a remnant bird is out there?
I mean, it seems improbable, scientifically speaking, because, you know, if they're this big, you know, surely they'd be seen more often, particularly by birders. I mean, how many birders do you have out on a daily basis out there looking for, you know, all types of things flying around? But seems improbable, but it's not impossible. And, you know, that's what's really fascinating. There seems to be a lot of consistency with regard to the eyewitnesses. You know, I've interviewed many dozens, maybe hundreds of eyewitnesses at this point. The descriptions are pretty consistent. The estimated wingspan averages about 14 or 15 feet. Some people claim 20, but, you know, sometimes it's hard to judge the size of things flying around up in the air. Yeah. But 14 to 15 foot wingspan on average. Usually, almost always, a dark color, charcoal gray or black or dark brown, with a hooked beak, like an acipterid, a raptor. Not a lot of color, or, you know, rarely people will describe other things like a white head or something. That's pretty rare. But so, yeah, consistent descriptions. And there are certain places where there seem to be more sightings, one of those being South Texas, and Texas in general. Another one being, for whatever reason, Illinois and central Illinois, which is where the Lawndale incident occurred, the case you just referenced. North central Pennsylvania, not too far from where I am now, the Susquehanna River Valley and the Black Forest, and Alaska. And those 4 states, you know, most states have produced some Thunderbird sightings, but those 4 seem to be, for whatever reason, if we want to speculate about a migration pattern or other variables, I mean, they seem to be reported more in those particular states.
Interesting. And now, are these reports are there, I guess, reports that go beyond modern times in the same area?
Yeah, I guess that's a interesting question. I hadn't really thought about that. Now, we have to acknowledge I meant to mention the Native American traditions, which, you know, kind of overlap. That's where we get this whole concept of a thunderbird. And, you know, I often joke that when people hear the word thunderbird, they either think of a sports car from the 70s or a fine wine that they buy at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, yeah.
The name Thunderbird actually comes from, many Native American traditions that describe these massive super birds, super eagles that are much larger than the eagles they were familiar with, or condors. And the beating of their wings caused thunder, and sometimes they would shoot lightning out of their eyes. And they were often seen, associated with storm fronts, and they would prey on people, swoop down and scoop up warriors and braves. But it's such a widespread belief throughout North America. I mean, you have it's the Wakanyan to the Lakota, the Tlanawa to the Cherokee, the Huhak have the Pawnee have the Huhak, the Ojibwe have Chegwe. I mean, there's just like tons of legends, all, and totems and things in the Pacific Northwest. So that's the other layer of evidence. As far as these things surviving into modern times, I'm sorry, that was the question? Where does it? I mean, it's not impossible in some remote corners of our continent. And this Thunderbird thing does seem to be primarily a North American cryptid. I don't really get big bird reports from other continents. So that's compelling too, because it seems like, okay, you do have certain distinct range habitats for different animals.
Sure.
I think it's possible, but improbable. And, the fact that we don't have any physical remains in terms of like giant nests, eggs being found. I used to say feathers, Christopher, but I actually had an interesting case recently where a woman who is in possession of a massive feather that we can't identify sent me some photographs and stuff. So I've been kind of working on that in recent weeks.
That's cool.
I really thought we'd peg it. She had this big feather. She said she found it in the woods up in Ohio when she was a kid, knew it was something special. And I mean, we've compared it to condors and big eagles and all kinds of pelicans, all kinds of birds. And this one has a very distinct shape and I can't remember what the little stem on the bottom is called, but it's interesting anyway. So maybe there are, but very scant physical evidence, one controversial film, hundreds of eyewitness accounts. That's where we're at. So I like to think it's possible, that there is a possibility that a Teratorn could have survived into modern times.
Now, what about specifically the pterosaur stories that persist to this day? What about those and the possibilities of that?
Well, certainly more problematic, because now we're talking about a gap in the fossil record that's 66 million years, right? There's no fossil evidence of pterosaurs. Were a highly successful group of specialized flying reptiles, characterized by they had basically a flap of skin, kind of like a bat, a thin membranous skin, wing, and they were archosaurs, so they were reptiles related to alligators, crocodiles, and dinosaurs and birds and things. But they were around for about 160 million years, from the Triassic to the very end of the Cretaceous, so the end of the Mesozoic era. And but there's never been a fossil. And their fossils are pretty prevalent from certain eras. They've found some really pristine and lots of amazing pterosaur fossils. And as you mentioned, Texas can boast, one of the largest species, Quetzalcoatlus northropii, which stood about 14 feet tall, about as tall as a giraffe, and had these giant. It's like an airplane, right?
Yeah, like look at it with the dinosaur in its beak. About a 40 foot wingspan, maybe 30 to 40. I mean, these things were massive. Still very lightweight, like big kites, basically. But they probably did prey on small animals. But I've gotten many of these living pterosaur reports. They're not all gigantic. Some people have reported like a 6 foot wingspan. Sometimes they report the pointy head crest that we think of from Jurassic Park. Other times, witnesses have reported a long serpentine tail that trails behind the body with a little fin on the end, and that's very diagnostic of the smaller pterosaurs known as rhamphorhynchoids, which were around earlier than the
the big pterodactyls. But so I've gotten a variety of different descriptions of different types of living pterosaurs. They kind of overlap. This is interesting, Christopher. They kind of overlap with the traditional Thunderbird reports. I've had them plotted on maps before, and it's like some of the cluster areas where the traditional feathered Thunderbirds are reported overlap with the living pterosaur reports. What does that tell you?
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And you know, especially if it's the fact of that is a range that would have supported them before. That kind of stuff, because, yeah, I don't know. We hear stories all the time. You teach about them in your class, about remnant species that come back, remnant species that we thought were once extinct that are surviving in small groups. You know, coelacanth is a prime example. They once thought that it was just like a fluke, just a few, something like that. Come to find out there's shoals of them. You know, there's an actual breeding population if you look in the proper spot for them. So, yeah.
Coelacanth is probably the best example, as you mentioned. Everyone has probably heard the story. Latimeria columni is the species that was first discovered off the coast of Africa in 1938 by accident. It was just found in a fishing net, and this lady from Marjorie Courtney Latimer, who you'd learn about in my course, was from the London Museum there in South Africa, and she got in touch with a world-famous ichthyologist and sent him drawings, and he was like, he said it was basically like a dinosaur stepped into modern times. This was essentially a living dinosaur, an ancient type of fish, a lobe-finned fish that has legs and a weird, you know, all kinds of weird features. But anyways, it was found in 1938, and you're right. They've discovered at least two populations. I think one off of Madagascar, one in Indonesia, another subspecies. They're big fish. I mean, they weigh about weigh about 200 pounds. Excuse me, dry air's getting to me tonight.
All right.
So that is essentially, I guess that would be the analogy we would use, right? If the coelacanth could have been, you know, extinct presumably for 66 million years, and then voila, here it is, you know. Yeah. Maybe something like a living pterosaur is not totally impossible, and that's what really excites me in this field, Christopher. It's I realize sometimes that, you know, there's not a lot of evidence and things seem highly unlikely or improbable, but they're not impossible. And, you know, the more people you talk to that have had these experiences, enough of them are really convincing or credible where you're like, whoa, there's something going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll bring up a map from NASA here. Now, granted, this is 2012, but there's a lot of black there, which means that there's a lot of unsettled country, you know, and especially whenever you start looking at Bigfoot and sightings like that, like it pretty well like swaths this empty spot here where you don't see development. But when you start looking at it like this, because we have this idea that like the entire United States, like where are you going to go? You know, we got cities everywhere. Like, no, the majority of the country is actively still almost empty space. You know, there's some infrastructure, roads, things like that connecting the major thoroughfares. But aside from that, you know, you get out into West Texas, that kind of stuff. Like you can drive for 5 hours and see nothing. Yeah. Nothing. Maybe some windmills and pump jacks. But aside from that, there ain't nothing, you know? And it's interesting to think that, yes, if that was their habitat before, things may have cooled off a little bit from what they were, you know, and they may have had to adapt some, but could it be possible that they live there? Sure.
Yeah, and there's some overlap in terms of the Texas cases. You know, I've investigated reports down south of the border too, and there are accounts in throughout the Sierra Madres, which are pretty remote. So that kind of corresponds with a close. You know, they're not too far from a flight to South Texas would not be that, you know, strenuous for something. But, you know, what's interesting, Christopher, is let's talk about these Alaskan Thunderbird cases, because I've gotten a cluster. I absolutely spent a lot of time in Alaska in 2015 when I was co-hosting Missing in Alaska up there. And so I got to do a Thunderbird episode and interview some people. But prior to that and subsequent to that, I've gotten a lot of reports from Alaska. And there are a couple cluster areas. One that's really interesting is kind of northeast of Anchorage and between Anchorage and Denali National Park. And I've gotten several reports from there from different eyewitnesses that I assume don't know each other in different towns and areas that have all described a giant black raptor type of bird, jet black, with about a 14 or 15 foot wingspan. And these are people that are very familiar with bald eagles, golden eagles, heck, maybe even a Steller's eagle. They've seen a lot of eagles up there, and they insist. And plotting those sightings and extending down into southeast Alaska, where you have a sighting from 2018. I think you just put the article up there. 2018, there were a cluster of sightings down near the Mendenhall Glacier and Mendenhall Lake, which I've been to. And so Alaska seems like, we could make an argument. Let's hypothesize here, okay?
Please.
Teratorns have survived into modern times. If a breeding population of them could exist anywhere in North America without being found, it would be in Alaska, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about 37 mountain ranges, 4 million lakes, tens of thousands of miles of coastline, abundant resources out there.
Yeah.
And just very few people.
More territory than Texas and way less settled. Less settled.
So if you have a breeding population there, maybe the ones that are seen across the continental U.S. are transient individuals that have flown down for whatever reason, as birds sometimes do get off course and kind of go on excursions, right? So, and that would kind of fit our profile or a model of these clusters where there are a bunch of sightings in a brief period of time and then they kind of go away for a while and reappear somewhere else. So. Just speculation, but that's what's fun, right? Just what if?
Well, no, and that's even whenever we had Ryan Edwards on, even whenever we had literal physicist Barbara Sobani on, like that is the job of science, Ken. Like I've been saying about the 3-eye atlas thing. I do not blame Avi Loeb at all. He put a hypothesis out there. Feel free to prove him otherwise. Mm-hmm. Until then, this is my hypothesis. Shoot holes in it. Let's see if it sinks, but you got to be willing to hypothesize. You got to be willing to literally take that scientific leap and say, yes, what if, because even Adam Davies, he's the reference that I use where it's like he's gone on all kinds of expeditions looking for Yeti and all kinds of stuff. But he's like, if there aren't local stories to begin with, what are you looking for? At least the local stories give you some kind of basis by which, like, there's a history of this and sightings of it. Now, can the local vegetation, local crops that grow, would the environment support it? Would it be able to find food? Would it be able to feed and breed? Things like that. And if so, now you raise money and you go on an expedition because you've got a couple things that match up. And there is a good chance that you may be able to find something at that point. So you keep doing it, and I think that's where a lot of people get discouraged, Ken, is the keeping on doing it. Like I belong to a lot of communities, and the one that I see all the time is the Skinwalker Ranch community, where they're like, they just keep launching rockets. And it's like, yes, because that's the repeatable science. Like, they know if they launch the rocket, something happens. And if they keep launching the rocket and that same thing keeps happening, hey, we have a call and response now. Like, now we have something we can poke and prod and study. But you got to get that repeatable evidence. Or data to become evidence, and that's just it. When you've got tons of stories, those are all points of data. Now, some of them may be misidentified. things like that. But they're all part of the data set that you're taking in as you're examining this literal scientific quandary.
Yeah, I know you're all about the scientific process, and you and I like to geek out on this stuff, but you're right. And to your first point, yes, it can be very frustrating. I can say, I've never seen a cryptid, and I've been looking for decades in very active areas. There have only been, in terms of Bigfoot and Sasquatch, I mean, I've been to pretty much every active area in North America that you've ever heard referenced as a place to go look, and spent a lot of time in the field. And over that time period, I've only had a handful of vocalizations and things that I was like, okay, that might have been something. So it's a very arduous process to do field research if you're looking for a biological specimen. Now, there are people, colleagues of mine, that go out looking for Bigfoot with a different philosophy, and they see him every weekend. So maybe I need to adapt more of that. But I think we're looking for different Bigfoots is kind of the way I look at it. So, but yeah, it's frustrating because you have to spend a lot of time out there. Someone has to look. Obviously, science is not. Traditional scientists aren't going to stick their necks out on something so controversial. So it is typically citizen scientists and laymen and people that are just passionate about the idea going out there and trying to spend the time to try to gather the evidence.
Well, and once again, even to gather the stories together, even to gather the accounts together of people who are willing to talk and share their story, because that is, once again, where you begin. No different than a scientist in the lab who says, hey, I did this and this happened. It's hearsay until somebody repeats it, So, and we have found a lot of things through that kind of science, through beginning with the experience and moving forward from there. So, and with that being said, moving into, I guess, from the physical in that kind of way, and I'm not going to say that the others that we're going to get into are not physical, but they tend to be much more, quote, experiential in their way and tied to paranormal things like Mothman. For instance, things like the Jersey Devil, that kind of stuff. How do those begin? How do those begin to take root in modern society in that kind of way? And how far back do they go?
Well, there's a lot of overlap, as I was suggesting earlier, with the other two types of winged cryptids. Once again, these flying humanoid reports, things like Mothman and the Chicago Mothman and what have you, seem to overlap with places where there are sightings of thunderbirds and, living pterosaurs and stuff. So that's kind of an interesting data point right there, right?
Yeah.
My genesis into investigating things like Mothman, I've always loved the idea of Mothman. I had a copy of Mothman Prophecies when I was a kid, and my mom used to tell me stories, and read all of John Keel's books, but I never really got into that research until I had started the Thunderbird research, and then ultimately that kind of opened some doors for me in terms of I did an episode of Monster Quest in 2009 where they sent me to Mexico to search for Mothman type beings that were being sighted there. Terror from the Skies, I think, is the name of the episode. But interviewed several people down in Mexico that had seen these, hombre pajaro, birdman type things. And what's really weird, Christopher, I always tell this story. When they flew me down from, at that time, Houston to Monterrey, very quick flight, right? But when I got off the plane and was going through the airport in Monterrey, there was a S1N1. Was that the virus that was real bad back then?
H1N1.
H1N1. I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. The swine flu.
Yeah, there was a breakout going on at that time in Mexico. So when I got off the plane, everyone was wearing surgical masks and quarantine.
Yep.
You know, we're used to that now, but that was pretty shocking in 2009 still. But so for people that want to pretend, or I say pretend, speculate that Mothman is somehow a harbinger of, you know, famine and pestilence and tragedy, that's kind of weird that happened. But anyways, that basically opened a door for me. And once I was on television, that show, and then I did a show with William Shatner in 2011 on the Point Pleasant Mothman, Lauren Coleman and myself. And, you know, then I began to get contacted by people that had experiences and interview them personally. And it's a weird thing, Christopher. I mean, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, because a lot of people are not as knowledgeable about different types of animals and the, you know, biology in general, would understand that something like Mothman, the physical descriptions, the behavioral descriptions do not match anything that has ever evolved or lived on this planet. These are chimeric beasts, combinations of humans and with wings, or the Jersey Devil you mentioned, you know, just different animal features, wings, all kind of meshed together. So there's no biological reality there. And also the behavior patterns are usually like really, you know, chasing cars at 100 miles an hour and lurking in the shadows and popping up to terrify people. Those are not natural behaviors either. So, and then you've got all the residual weirdness with Mothman and other flying humanoids. There are a lot of overlapping UFO reports, UAP reports that go with these flying humanoid reports. There are a lot of sightings of Mothman type creatures at airports and military bases. There are people that have had encounters that claim that they've developed shortly thereafter precognition and other psychic abilities. There are allegations of mysterious men in black, not Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, but like really scary, almost non-human type of beings that show up and terrorize or threaten people that have had. So you've got all these elements of, poltergeist activity is broken out at eyewitnesses' house. So there's all these elements of high strangeness in this flying humanoid phenomenon. Plus the physical descriptions tend to vary more. I mean, you have a lot of consistency in the Point Pleasant area. If you look at the case like the Chicago Mothman, the physical descriptions are kind of all over the map. So, but I think it's a valid phenomenon. I think it's something that goes back a very long time. It seems to be global, and it seems to be metaphysical in nature. Something, you know, supernatural, paranormal, pick your word. Extraterrestrial, demonic. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways you can go with this stuff. It's well,
and it's interesting that you bring that up, because we have had the conversation, you and I, both privately as well as on this show, regarding specifically cultural identity when it comes to certain cryptids, things like that. Like, for instance, I'm a Cajun, so we grabbed the werewolf from France and it became Rougarou for us, you know, things like that. Now, is that close to Dogman? Is that close to Skinwalker? That kind of stuff, where it's like a cursed person that turns into that? Sure, absolutely. You know, when you start looking at a lot of the areas that those sightings exist, you start looking at a lot of Germanic and French settlement, which is where European-wise, where a lot of those stories came from. Is it kind of the same way with the winged cryptids as well? Because, I mean, you've definitely got, especially in Mexico, La Lechuza, you know, things like that. And these things, yes, seem to be some kind of harbinger or warder of protector almost, where it's like, stay away from here. Like, even the Point Pleasant sightings originally started near the dynamite storage places and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, our first clue goes back 17,000 years. Painted on the walls of Lascaux caves in France, there's a lot of normal animals, buffalo and horses and woolly rhinos, things running around, but there's one anthropomorphic creature. It's a man-like figure with a bird's head. It's known as the Birdman of Lascaux, and it's kind of in a sacred part, what's considered to be a sacred part of the cave. So we have the notion in human culture of a man-bird mixture going back about 17,000 years. And then, if you go back just a few thousand years to ancient Sumeria, you have the Apkallu or Abgal, often connected to the Anunnaki and Enki and those types of beliefs, but it was basically a demigod from the sky. It was a man, usually with a beard, but with wings. Their depictions of the Apkallu were put in very sacred places. They were kind of considered to be protectors, but also, again, sages, Then you have Pazuzu, you mentioned earlier, a winged humanoid figure with a dog-like head and 4 wings and a scorpion's tail. From ancient Assyria, and all over the world again. Garuda in India and Buddhist culture, the Tengu in Japan. Here in the America, you have Quetzalcoatl, which is interesting because we were talking about Quetzalcoatlus earlier, but they're the feathered serpent of Aztec and Maya mythology.
Yep.
Camazotz, the death bat in Mexico, and then throughout Europe. So it's like all over the world, you have these age-old traditions of winged humanoid type creatures, and sometimes they are connected to tragedy and cataclysm. Pazuzu certainly was. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, you have, for example, in Ireland and Scotland, the Banshee and the Scree, which are said to be kind of harbingers that winged humanoid creatures or devil birds that show up. And there was a famous case. Anne and I are actually going to be hopefully investigating this when we go to Scotland. We're leading a tour to Scotland in June. Mystery adventure tours if people are interested in going with us to Scotland to look for the Scree and the Loch Ness Monster. But supposedly the night before the Battle of Culloden Moor, there was this Mothman type figure that flew over the Jacobite soldiers. And they took it as a bad omen, and sure enough, the next day they were slaughtered by the English. So, that's a story that's pretty prevalent. So, you have examples of these ideas that Mothman and other creatures are harbingers of tragedy or death, disease, famine, what have you. And so, there is some evidence of that in these old mythologies and stuff.
And that is fascinating. When you start looking at the way that those stories date back throughout culture, throughout humanity, and carry forward to today. And when you start looking at specifically the way a lot of things are being split in the para community, where it's good and evil, angel, demon. It's really fascinating to see that emerging in that kind of way, and really kind of going back to this idea of almost once again a warding spirit trying to keep you away from something. So yeah. And earlier today I was having a similar conversation, a completely different format, but we were talking about owls and the significance, lechuza in Mexico and Texas, and the significance that the appearance of owls portray in different cultures. In Hispanic culture, it's if a lechuza, an owl, sometimes it's considered to be a witch. It's not a real owl. Yep. Lands outside your window and whistles. That's pretty bad news, because that means that someone in the family is going to get sick or die or whatever. So owls are often connected with, death or being kind of, so where does that connect to Mothman? Maybe the owls are just kind of, similar enough, and kind of embedded in our DNA in terms of we see at night as giant winged creature coming, and it's, maybe it evolved somehow from, our interactions with these flying humanoid creatures like Mothman, and then we came to fear other, winged creatures of the night. Yeah. Bats and owls and things. Yeah, because it's definitely the same way in Native American culture, where if you hear an owl, somebody has died. And it's interesting. And even the Owl Man of Cornwall.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
It's again, interesting. And I remember driving, I grew up in Houston, right over in West Houston, Spring Branch area. And there used to be, it's very developed now, but there used to be this little windy road that I used to love to take from my mom's house to my dad's house. It was just this little back road, super fun. And there was one night that I was driving and I saw the typical fire hydrant that was there on this turn. But there was something else on top of it. And I mean, it was like the size of the fire hydrant, Ken.
Wow.
Owl. And it turned its head 180 degrees and its eyes lit up in lit up in my headlights. And when its wings unfurled, it was massive. It was huge. Oh, yeah. And like, I freaked out. It was great. It was one of the coolest sightings of any animal I've ever had in my life. I knew what it was. But if I didn't, that would have been a totally different experience for me. Had I not known of great horned owls and the large owl species that live here in Texas, stuff like that. But it easily had an 8-foot wingspan. Like it was, wow. It was big. So,
well, that's a great segue, Christopher. I'll give you a little special bonus nugget content item here.
Please.
Accounts of giant owls. There was a cryptozoologist named Mark Hall. Sadly, he passed away of cancer several years ago, but he and I used to correspond when I first got in the field. He goes back to Ivan Sanderson. He used to work with Ivan Sanderson at the Society of the Investigation of the Unexplained. He's good friends with Lorne Coleman. He had a theory that there was this giant owl called Big Hoot. That's what he called it, kind of a play off on Bigfoot. And he had collected accounts of owls that were either man-sized or in one case described as being 12 feet tall. And I think that was in Ohio somewhere. But anyways, he always kind of had the idea that the Mothman was this giant owl, and that's what people saw, was this huge man-sized owl, which, you know, you can see some similarities to the eyewitness descriptions and things like that. In all my vast years of research of winged cryptids, I've received 2, maybe 3 accounts of giant man-sized owls. One came from a lady who emailed me. And apparently her father had been a truck driver in Florida, and he was driving down Alligator Alley one night, which, you know, is that long stretch through the swamp. There's nothing there. And he actually had to stop his truck, he said, because there was an owl as big as a man standing in the road, and it wouldn't budge or fly off. It just was standing there. And then the other account came from Tyler, Texas, believe it or not. Oh. A gentleman reached out to me and said that his elderly mother, who didn't really want to make a big deal out of it, looked out her window one night and saw an owl that she was sure was 5 feet tall standing in her backyard. So I think I've got one more and I can't think of it, but I just thought that would be fun. Oh, here's the other one. In northern Arkansas in the Ozarks, there's a place called Hemden Holler, which is kind of a cool little nook holler with a waterfall, and it's near Compton, Arkansas, and supposedly there is a man-sized owl that haunts that area. Not an owl man, but a giant owl. So you don't hear about them as much as the other winged cryptid types, but there are these supposedly sightings or observations of some kind of owl even twice as big as what you saw, Christopher. Yep. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how much you enjoyed that, but I thought that was
that was awesome, man. Thank you so much, truly, because it is one of those, like, it again is one of the most amazing animal experiences of my life. I was very fortunate to know that it was not out of the ordinary, even though it was a magnificent moment. But to know that there are other reports out there of that is really cool, because once again, is it possible? Sure. You know, there are larger than large cats, even with house cats, stuff like that. And it reminds me actually of the Messengers. Mike Cleland
No.
Wrote the book Messengers, Owls, Synchronicity, and UFO Abductees. And I met him at MUFON in Covington, Kentucky, a couple years ago when I sponsored and went and did interviews and stuff. I didn't get an interview with him, but his table was set up right next to mine.
Very cool.
Amy got the book, and it's fascinating. I watched his presentation, and it's really interesting to see that crossover between owls and abduction and things like that. It's just and is there a connection? I don't know. I mean, I guess that's kind of like saying, most fires are started by firemen because you always see a fireman at the fire, But it is a very interesting synchronicity, and it is something very fascinating to look at, even the connection of these other owl sightings, that kind of stuff, along with those. And I even have posited the fact that, specifically the Jersey Devil, the first sightings of that, things like that, are not too far away from when the hammerhead bat was first discovered. So, had it come over as a curio or something like that, like somebody's curious animal, like a pet kangaroo or anything like that, and gotten loose, granted, you would need a breeding population, but the accounts of the Jersey Devil and a hammerhead bat bear some resemblance.
Yeah, people have brought that up to me before. I mean, I guess hammerhead bats do have very horse-like heads, which is kind of what's been depicted in terms of, when we think of the Jersey Devil, the quintessential sighting was the Nelson Evans sighting of January 19th, 1909, when a couple claimed they watched this thing prancing around on the roof of their garage or something. But it had a horse-like head and, of course, bat-like wings, which we know that the hammerhead does have bat-like wings and a horse-like head. The body tends to be more squat, whereas the Jersey Devil is portrayed as having very long legs and a long tail. My only argument against that, Christopher, would be that, at least in terms of the January sightings, I don't think a hammerhead bat would fare very well in somewhere like New Jersey or Pennsylvania. They're very, very adapted to equatorial habitats. But they're, like you said, if someone had a hammerhead bat and it got out loose for a couple days, I mean, that could certainly launch 1,000 ships. You know what I mean? In
Absolutely.
terms of so yeah, it's a possibility. There are out of place animals from time to time that pop up here and there. And, people have, going back one more time to the winged thunderbirds, there are people that have proposed that maybe they're condors that are, flying out of their traditional habitat in California, Baja California, Utah, Arizona, whatever. I think that's unlikely in this day and age because, there are only a few hundred condors California condors currently alive, many in zoos, and most of the other ones that are in the wild are very closely watched and monitored by wildlife management. And they live in a very specialized habitat with these very high elevations that they can kind of plunge off of and kind of helps them get airborne. I don't see a condor flying to Illinois, for example, and central Illinois and picking a boy off the ground or Texas. I don't know. That seems unlikely, but I'm sure there are people out there that would probably suggest that. Oh, they're just seeing condors, really big eagles, those things like that. So who knows?
Yeah, no. And that is a good point to bring up. The idea of, once again, could something possibly, but is something probably not in that kind of way. So yes, we are looking at misidentified species. The same way as I will always concede the fact of, are there UFOs? I don't believe there are UFOs. There's a scientific data set that says that there's an anomaly in our sky in a very small percentile range that is not our technology. And that is an actual scientific data set. So I don't believe there are UFOs. I know there are UFOs. It's funny because when it comes to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, I think that there is enough data set. Same with, Dr. Meldrum, who we just lost this last year. He believed that there was enough in the scientific data set to say, yes, there is something. There's something. Do we know what it is? Absolutely not. But there's something there. And when it comes to the winged cryptid side of things, I think that the experiences are there throughout time, from 1700s on, even beyond that in other cultures. I think that there is tons of experience, and I will always, until otherwise proven, believe the experiencer. That's just where I fall on things, Ken. So sure. I think that there's a possibility, but there's still a lot of science to be done to prove whether or not there is a real possibility for that.
Hey, it's a lot of fun looking anyways.
It is. Well, and it's interesting because that's one of the things that we spoke about with Anne Celine last time she was on. It's one of the things that we just spoke about with physicist Barbara Sobani. And that's the idea of why the investigation. Why are you investigating any topic? It doesn't matter, folks, whether you're out, searching for paranormal data on a haunted site or searching for cryptozoological information, digging through accounts, whatever, UFO, UAP wise. Why are you investigating? And you need to ask yourself that, because it becomes a lens through which you look at your data. Are you investigating to confirm your belief in something and to confirm yourself, or are you investigating for the science end of it and to see if the possibility is there with an open mind, accepting the data prima facie as it is,
Well stated, my friend.
In the last few minutes, Ken, let's talk about your class. Let's talk about some of because once again, I've taken your class.
Thank you. Yes, you have. You aced it.
I need to move my diploma. My diploma's over here on this wall near Jimi Hendrix and all that kind of stuff. You're sharing good company with Jimi Hendrix and Hot Tuna and stuff like that. But let's get into some of the modules that you're teaching, because you just did a great one from what I heard on Arkansas cryptids, all kinds of stuff.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. And thank you for taking my course. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So over on my Patreon, which is Exploring Cryptozoology, I am teaching a cryptozoology course. By becoming an explorer or a VIP knowledge seeker, you will get at least one class a week. I'm sorry, not a week, a month. You get at least one class a month, different topics. There's quizzes provided and other materials, and you can actually earn a certificate like yourself, Christopher, if someone wants to keep going all the way through. Or you can just kind of piecemeal and choose different classes. You can purchase them right off my Patreon there are links to recorded versions and so forth. My next class is actually going to be, on the 21st of this month, Saturday the 21st, I'm going to be doing the Yeti, the abominable snowman, which I know a lot of people are excited about. So yeah, I've been really enjoying that. I got some great students, and it's a lot of fun. We talk about a lot of different types of cryptids, from thunderbirds to Bigfoot to lake monsters to Mothman to Minnesota Iceman, living dinosaurs, you name it. So it's been a lot of fun. I also have a new podcast called Cryptid Legacy, also on my Patreon, and by being a supporter, $5 a month, you can get 2 episodes a month. And it's basically just I'm sitting right here, as you can see, this is my cryptid man cave. But, it's basically just talking about kind of like my experiences in the field, different investigations, working with other researchers. It's kind of a peek behind the curtain, Christopher, as you said earlier. I've got a lot of stories. I don't want to get sued, so I'm going to have to be a little discreet in terms of what and who I talk about. But I've spoken to a lot of very fascinating people Heard a lot of incredible experiences, just a lot of adventures. And eventually I'm going to grow it out a little bit, and maybe I'll have guests and co-hosts, and, we'll see how it goes from there. But come on over to Exploring Cryptozoology on Patreon if you want to check out the podcast and maybe the cryptozoology classes.
Absolutely, man. I was so happy to see you dipping your toe into the classes to begin with, because it was something that we had kind of tossed ideas around with, but to see you jumping into the world of podcasting, it's a journey that is near and dear to my heart. Like, I used to own a podcast network at one point, all kinds of things. So I'm always happy whenever somebody decides to take their message to the world in a different way. And make things accessible in that kind of way for people. So thank you for that, Ken. Thank you, as always, for the amazing and candid conversation.
It's been great, as always. Good conversation, and we have to do it again real soon. Absolutely.
Hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience. While you are online checking out everything over at patreon.com/exploring cryptozoology. That's where you can find Ken's classes. That is where you can find his podcast. Make sure to stop on by kengerhard.com. That is where you can find all of his books. That's where you can schedule appearances, find appearances near you, things like that. Also, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm, folks. That is where you can find all of our episodes. That's where you can like, follow, subscribe, share. That is where you can find the Knowledge Vault full of declassified government materials and all kinds of other great stuff, including your link to Curious Research. We have all kinds of new research stuff coming out currently. So stop on by, check that out under the research tab. We have all kinds of great free tools over here for you to be able to examine your data, for you to be able to examine forensically beta is a great one for examining pictures, things like that, to be able to extract EXIF and metadata to make sure the images are real, not fake. Sonic Visualizer, if you're out there gathering EMPs or, cryptid calls, that kind of stuff. Stop on by and check out the free tool base, y'all, at curiousresearch.com/tools. Thank you, as always, everybody, for your open hearts, your open minds tonight. That is what makes the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APR TV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices.
Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media family of podcasts. For more shows and members-only content, visit groundzeroplus.com today.
Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.